Hello, I am Hannah Gunlock, and I believe that zoos should not be made illegal. While a common argument against zoos is that they are not healthy for animals, the Animal Welfare Act is in place to ensure the health and safety of these animals. While some argue that animals often become neurotic while in captivity, and PETA states that enclosures aren't suitable for roaming, the Animal Welfare Act sets minimum standards for the care, handling, housing, and transports of animals exhibited in zoos. And in addition to this, many states place additional legislation in order to protect these animals. Yet another argument is that zoos are not beneficial for society. For example, conservation biology says that zoos aren't beneficial because when they surveyed what students learned, they found that only 34% learned anything from an unguided trip to a zoo, and 16% of students learned false information. However, this data is for unguided trips, and with this, you have to rely on students reading signs and collecting the proper information instead of being engaged and listening to an educated presenter. This also means that misinformation could have come from students simply skimming the signs instead of properly understanding them. As long as these students receive properly guided tours, zoos benefit them by giving them a good learning experience, as well as allowing people to see animals that they would normally never be able to see, and could also prevent people from going out in the wild and potentially harming themselves or the animals by trying to find them in the wild. Some also say that animals in zoos experience a shorter lifespan than those in the wild. But according to BBC Wildlife, in over 80% of cases, animals actually live longer in zoos than in the wild. The reason that people will sometimes say that animals experience a shorter lifespan is because sometimes elephants do not live as long because they are so large of a species that they will sometimes struggle in captivity. But with the Animal Welfare Act ensuring their habitats for these animals, this data shouldn't happen. Some additional issues that could arise with the banning of zoos is the placement of all the animals that are currently in zoos. These animals simply could not be released into the wild because they lack survival skills that are typically learned while growing up in the wild. Also, zoos employ many people in many fields. For example, the food industry, the maintenance industry, and many people in the veterinary field. If zoos were to close, the market would be flooded in all of these fields, and many of these people may struggle to find a job. Though creating additional policies to ensure the protection and well-being of animals could be beneficial, getting rid of zoos is not warranted by these arguments, and the downfall of all these zoos would simply cause too many problems for it to be feasible.